Medieval scholasticism and what came before are the topics that we are about to explore. We'll start with Anselm of Canterbury, born in Italy, later exiled by King William and King Henry. He used reason to understand better what he already believed. He had questions like, what does the existence of God mean? The ontological argument of God is one of his highlights, and this is a paraphrase of what he writes. God is the greatest being of which we can think, and being in reality is greater than being in thought. If God exists only in our thinking, then there is a greater being that can be conceived, and that is a contradiction that should not be believed. The phrasing of this argument may sound confusing. It may sound odd, but Anselm's point is that there must be a God. Not everyone agreed, but this argument through the years has lasted and enters conversation in our philosophy classes. Reason and faith are paired in this method we see so that we can understand better what by faith we believe. This method was also applied to Jesus, the God-man. Why did the divine become incarnate? Was another question for Anselm. See, the sin belonged to humanity, so a human was required to pay, but only an infinite being could pay that debt away. This was not a prevalent view of what happened on the cross in that day, but the West embraced satisfactory atonement. It became the only way. Peter Albar disagreed with this. His big thing was love. The cross was the pinnacle of this. And that's why God came down from above. The third forerunner was Lambert. He spent time systemizing theology. He defended 7 sacraments: baptism, confirmation, Eucharist, penance, anointing the sick, holy orders, and matrimony. Along with these 3 men, Aristotle re-entered the scene, meaning observation and the senses were more legitimate and helpful than they had been. When we think about scholasticism, 2 monks are first rate: the Dominican Thomas Aquinas and his teacher, Albert the Great. Albert distinguished between philosophy and theology. To understand this difference, the place and use of reason is key. The philosopher must work with reason alone, but the theologian has another string in their bow. The theologian, along with reason, can work with truth revealed, and that is a major distinction from the philosophical field. Like Anselm, Thomas cared about faith and reason, but he viewed things differently in this later season. He continued Albert's work concerning what was true. Philosophy was limited to reason. Theology was not, was his view. God does not limit salvation to those in the academic field, so the saving truth that we need to know, while it can be reasoned, has been revealed. Like Anselm, he worked to argue for God's existence, but between their approaches, there was a great distance. Thomas Aquinas gave 5 reasons for God: the unmoved mover, the very first cause, a necessary being who caused us to be, an absolute perfection to measure you and to measure me. Fifthly, things without reason seem to have a purpose and a goal, so a rational designer must be behind it all. Much of Thomas' work was guided by this thought: we do not know what God is, but what God is not. Thomas put Aristotle and faith into relation, allowing for a greater valuing of God's physical creation. All this was the beginning of a reorientation, shaping how the church thinks, shaping scientific observation. Now, we can walk through this world thinking we are objective, but when we consider this history, we gain a different perspective. Plato, Aristotle, Augustine, and Aquinas, whether we like it or not, they in some way define us. Passed down through generations, they've shaped how we think. Their work and our lives, they do interlink. We still discuss these ideas of God with one another, but how do they help us love our sister and love our brother? Well, if God exists and God is a purpose, we probably should allow this God to direct us. We all have big questions. We know that that's true. And I love that these giants in church history had these questions too. The conversation continues, of which they are a part, but it is you and it is me who must continue this art. Keep asking these questions and think about faith deeply. Be bold in your searching. Don't go about it meekly. It is scholars like these who remind us that there is always more to know. So with humility, curiosity, and above all love, I charge you to go.